Primary custody awarded to the father.
I didn't want to win. I just wanted a family.
From the outside, the Harper family had it all. An elegant white colonial in Connecticut, well-behaved kids, and a picture-perfect marriage. But behind the shutters, things were unraveling. Daniel Harper, 42, sat in his study, rubbing his temples after another draining day. The house was calm, too calm. Across the hall, his wife Emily moved quietly in the kitchen, preparing dinner out of routine, her thoughts miles away. Upstairs, Sophie, 16, scrolled her phone under fairy lights, ignoring unfinished art and laundry. Down the hall, Ethan, 12, was glued to a video game, lost in his own world. To neighbors, they looked like a postcard. Daniel, the respected lawyer, Emily, the PTA regular, two bright kids. But under the surface, cracks widened each day. Daniel walked into the kitchen and offered a cautious smile. "Smells great," Emily replied without looking up. "Dinner's in the oven." His gaze fell on a blue journal she'd left out, one of many recently scattered around. He asked gently, "Everything okay?" "I'm organizing the week," she said, rattling off the kids' schedules. He nodded, pretending that was enough. Later, while Emily cleaned up and Daniel stared blankly at the news, Sophie noticed one of the notebooks in her room. She had read a line earlier that stuck with her. "I don't know how much longer I can pretend." Ethan couldn't explain it, but he felt something was wrong. The warmth in his parents' voices had faded. The house was quieter now, like they were all walking on eggshells. Dinner passed in polite conversation and silence. Afterward, as Daniel disappeared into his study and Sophie lingered, she watched her mom scrub dishes with weary determination. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked. Emily straightened. "Just tired, sweetheart." Sophie hugged her, sensing that tired meant much more. That night, the house fell into a hush. Daniel worked late. Emily wrote in her journal upstairs. Ethan fell asleep mid-game. Sophie stared at her ceiling, wondering what her mom was really feeling. In the morning, everything looked normal. Pancakes, coffee, rushed schedules. But inside Emily's purse was an envelope, divorce papers. Daniel tried to connect. "Got plans today?" Emily met his gaze, colder than usual. Yes. He didn't ask more. He'd learned not to. After the kids left for school, Emily stayed behind. She pulled the envelope out, running her fingers over the seal. It wasn't a snap decision. It came from years of feeling dismissed, minimized, and ignored. Daniel, already in his car, assumed things would smooth over. He hadn't read her journals. Maybe now he wished he had. Later, he sent a hopeful text. "Dinner tonight." "Just us?" Her reply came an hour later. "Can't, busy." That evening, Daniel returned home to find Emily waiting. The kids were out. An envelope rested on the table. "What's going on?" he asked, suddenly tense. "I'm filing for divorce," she said calmly. He froze. "Emily, what are you saying?" "I'm done. I want full custody, the house, and a fair division of assets." "We've been married 17 years, he said, voice cracking. "This isn't how it ends." "It already has," she said. "You just didn't notice?" He stood, pacing. "I've been there, worked hard, gave you everything. That's not mistreatment. You never listened. You decided everything for us. I stopped existing in my own life." Daniel's face fell. "But I loved you. You loved control. You never once asked what I needed." "I can fix this. Therapy, time, anything." Emily shook her head. "I already gave it time. I'm done." The silence that followed felt final. Daniel stared at the envelope. For the first time, he realized everything might really fall apart. "I tried, Daniel," she added quietly. "For years. You just never heard me." Daniel sank into his chair, stunned. He searched her face for some flicker of the woman he once knew. The partner who laughed at his jokes, danced at their wedding, cried with him when Sophie was born. But now she looked like a stranger, unshaken, resolved, unreachable. "You already made the decision, didn't you?" he asked, his voice brittle. Emily nodded. No tears, just clarity. "I had to, for me, for the kids." His hands trembled as he opened the envelope. The legal language was cold, final, divorce, custody, assets. She wanted nearly everything. "I'm not signing this," he muttered. "You can't just erase me. I'll fight this. I am a lawyer." "Do what you need to," Emily replied flatly. "My mind's made up." Daniel threw the envelope down and left the room. Upstairs, he shut himself in his office, staring at a family photo that now felt like a relic from a vanished life, his fists clenched. Something inside him cracked. His marriage, his identity, all of it. Downstairs, Emily stood frozen. The words were out. There was no going back. No relief followed, only fear and tension. She knew Daniel wouldn't surrender quietly. Catherine, her attorney, had warned her. A legal war was inevitable. But Emily wasn't afraid anymore, just exhausted. Sometime later, the kids returned. The silence in the house unsettled them. Sophie tapped on Daniel's office door. No answer. She found Emily at the kitchen table, blank-eyed. "Mom, what's going on?" Sophie asked. Emily offered a faint smile. "It's fine, sweetheart, just grown-up stuff. Go do your homework." Sophie didn't believe her, but said nothing. She went upstairs, heart heavy. Even Ethan, usually in his own world, could tell something was wrong. No one had to say it. Everything felt off. That night, sleep escaped them all. Daniel pored over documents, mind racing for legal angles. Emily stared at the ceiling, torn between fear and resolve. Sophie scribbled into her journal, and Ethan lay awake, confused by the quiet unraveling around him. The Harper home had become a war zone in disguise. A week passed, and the atmosphere was brittle, every conversation a potential landmine. Daniel had moved into the downstairs guest room, trying to keep some normalcy for the kids. Outwardly, he maintained routine. Inside, he was wrecked, confused by how the life he thought was solid had crumbled overnight. Emily, on the surface, held it together, driving Ethan to chess club, helping Sophie with schoolwork. But it was all precision and performance. Her lawyer had started gathering everything they needed: journal entries, letters, witness statements. Emily didn't want a courtroom battle, but she would face one if it meant reclaiming her life. Sophie, observant and emotionally tuned in, was the first to grasp the truth. She'd overheard enough late-night arguments to understand what was coming. Divorce, custody. She didn't share this with Ethan, who was still innocent in his distractions, but she watched. The notebooks her mom stashed away, the tension in her dad's posture, it all spelled collapse. Ethan felt it too, though less clearly. His mom's hugs had changed, tighter, like she didn't want to let go. His dad had grown silent, his old dinner table jokes gone. Home didn't feel safe anymore, so he disappeared into games where the rules made sense and the battles had winners. One Friday night, Daniel came home early. He carried a bottle of wine, his jacket wrinkled, his expression unsure, like he was searching for a truce. Emily was in the kitchen, making lasagna, her jaw tight with restraint. The kids were upstairs. The house felt too quiet. "Maybe we could eat together, like before," he said, setting the wine down gently. She didn't turn. "Daniel, this doesn't change anything. We can't pretend." His hands gripped the counter. "I'm not pretending. I'm trying to understand. You blindsided me, and now you want me to just accept it? You're tearing this family apart. I'm trying to save it," she replied, her voice trembling with controlled fury. "From becoming something it was never meant to be. You don't hear yourself. You shut me down. You made decisions for me, not with me." He raised his voice, angry now. "I gave you everything. This house, the kids' schools, your freedom. And now I'm the villain?" She stepped closer, her voice low but cutting. "You gave me comfort, but you took away my voice. You dismissed my ideas until I stopped having any. You made me disappear. That's not love, Daniel. That's control." "It was emotional pain," Emily said softly, but the words still landed hard. Daniel stepped back, stunned. "Are you serious? You think I've mistreated you? Emily, I've never laid a hand on you. I never humiliated you. How can you say that?" Her hands trembled as she looked away. "Not all damage is visible. You just never saw it." Before he could respond, Sophie entered the kitchen. She paused in the doorway, eyes scanning their faces. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice wary. Emily tried to smile. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Dinner's almost ready." But Sophie didn't move. "I heard you yelling. Why can't you talk like normal people?" Daniel forced calm. "Sophie, this is between us. It'll be okay." She blinked back tears. "You always say that, but it never is." She turned and left, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. The silence that followed was thicker than before. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. Instead, he grabbed a bottle of wine and disappeared into the living room, the TV humming in the background while his thoughts spiraled. The next morning, Daniel sat across from his attorney, Martin Craig, a longtime friend known for his success in high-conflict divorces. Martin flipped through the documents Daniel brought. "She's not playing around," Martin said. "Full custody. 70%. She's going for everything. Her lawyer's Catherine Wells. Daniel muttered. I did some digging. She's ruthless. Martin nodded. Wells focuses on emotional conflict cases. She'll twist your marriage to fit her narrative. We'll need to show you we're engaged, caring, and supportive. I'll need people who can vouch for you. Friends, teachers, co-workers. Anyone who can show you're not the person she's painting. Daniel clenched his jaw. I'm not letting her take the kids, or rewrite our life like I was some kind of tyrant. I get it, Martin said. But keep your emotions in check. Judges don't reward men who lose control. At the same time, Emily met with Catherine in her sleek minimalist office. Catherine studied Emily's journal entries and friend statements. This is strong, she said. The emotional pattern is clear. We can build a solid case around this. I don't want the kids dragged through this, Emily replied, voice tight. Catherine gave a cool smile. We'll shield them as much as we can, but Daniel will come at you hard. Be ready for that. Emily nodded. He'll try to destroy me, and we'll be ready when he does. That evening, Sophie sat at her desk, hands hovering over the keyboard. She hesitated, then typed, How do you know if someone is being hurt emotionally? The answers hit hard. Manipulation, control, making someone feel small. She tried to match those words with her dad, the one who taught her to ride a bike, who always showed up at her school events. But then she remembered her mom's distant stare, the way her voice sometimes shook. A heavy confusion settled over her, making it hard to breathe. Downstairs, Ethan stumbled across one of Emily's open notebooks. A sentence caught his eye. I'm tired of being a shadow. He didn't understand it, but it made him uneasy. He quietly closed the book and went to bed, troubled and unsure why. The Harper house had become a quiet battleground. Daniel was gearing up to defend his version of the story. Emily was steeling herself for a fight she never wanted but couldn't avoid. And their children, unknowingly caught in the crossfire, were left to make sense of a storm they didn't ask for. 2 weeks had passed since Emily handed over the divorce papers, and every day since had felt like walking a tightrope. Daniel tried to hold on, for the kids, for his pride, but nothing felt stable anymore. Their home felt staged, like everyone was reading from a forgotten script. At work, Daniel stared blankly at a draft of his counterclaim. Joint custody, equal division, rejection of her accusations. The words felt distant, like they belonged to someone else's life. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, chasing memories of happier days. Cape Cod, Sophie's debates, Ethan's music recital. But those moments felt far away, like photos curling at the edges. A knock pulled him back. It was Linda, his assistant. You've got a meeting in 30 minutes. Want me to reschedule? Daniel shook his head and gave a tired smile. No, I'm good. Thanks. She hesitated. You sure you're okay? You don't look like you've slept. He rubbed his face. Just family stuff. I'll be fine. As she left, his phone buzzed. Martin's message. Need to talk. New witness information. Meet at 6. Daniel replied. See you then. But his mind was already spiraling again. Meanwhile, Emily sat in the library leading her book club, surrounded by polite laughter and tea. The chosen novel? A story about a woman escaping a suffocating marriage. Her pick. Her secret. She nodded as others spoke, but her mind was elsewhere. On court dates, on strategy, on fear. Catherine had said they had a strong case, but Emily knew Daniel wouldn't let go quietly. He never had. And now, neither could she. After court, Emily stayed behind at the library, returning books and straightening shelves, simple tasks that calmed her nerves and gave her a break from legal forms and custody arguments. She didn't see Sarah Miller approach at first. Emily, Sarah said with a cautious smile. It's been forever. How are you? Tall, with short hair and clinking earrings, Sarah still carried the vibrant energy Emily remembered. Emily forced a smile. Busy. Kids, home? The usual, she replied, keeping it vague. Sarah tilted her head. You always had a plan. Back in school, you never missed a step. Emily stiffened, but kept her tone light. Well, life likes to throw curveballs. Sarah smiled knowingly. Sure. But you always found a way to stay one move ahead. She gave a small wink before walking off, leaving Emily uneasy. Back home, Emily found Sophie at the kitchen table with her literature book open but untouched. Ethan was upstairs, likely gaming with headphones on. Emily set her bag down and approached her daughter. How was school? Sophie shrugged. Fine. What about you? You were at the library all afternoon. Emily hesitated. Book club. Sophie looked up, suspicious. You've been going out a lot, writing a lot. What are you writing about? Emily paused. Just personal thoughts. You know I like to journal. Sophie's voice sharpened. I read one. It said you were tired of pretending. Are you pretending with us? Caught off guard, Emily quickly composed herself. It's just stress. You don't need to worry. But Sophie didn't let it go. Stop treating me like I'm clueless. You and Dad barely speak. He's in the guest room. What's really going on? Emily sighed. Your dad and I are dealing with things, but we're trying. Are you? Sophie asked, standing up. Because it doesn't look like it. Then she disappeared into her room, leaving Emily silent. Meanwhile, Daniel met his attorney, Martin, at a quiet restaurant on the edge of town. Martin ordered bourbon. Daniel stuck to water. He needed a clear head. I spoke to people Emily used to be close with, Martin said, sliding a folder across the table. Daniel opened it. What did they say? Apparently, she's always been calculating. Sarah Miller said Emily planned everything in college, nothing impulsive. Another woman, Laura, recalled Emily asking about divorce and custody years ago. It may have started a long time back. Daniel's jaw tightened. So she's been planning this? We can't prove intent, but this gives us leverage. If we show she's been planning this for years, her claims will look calculated, not the result of real pain. Daniel stared at the folder. I thought we were a family. Martin gave him a firm look. Then fight for it, she will. That night, Daniel returned home, drained. Sophie was on the couch, scrolling her phone. She looked up. Dad, can we talk? He sat beside her. Of course, Sophie hesitated. I think Mom's hiding something, her notebooks. She won't tell me what's really going on. I don't know what to believe. Outside, rain glazed the streets of Hartford like glass. In the Harper home, the lights were on, but the warmth was gone. Daniel sat alone in the guest room, hunched over his laptop. The days had blurred together, legal meetings, tense conversations, Sophie's questions. He felt like he was falling apart, unable to stop it. He thought about the things he'd heard, Emily's friends calling her calculated, Sophie's worries, the secrets she was keeping. And for the first time, he considered something he hadn't dared before. Emily's old laptop sat on a shelf in the study. Not the one she carried everywhere, but a forgotten backup used for bills and calendars. He remembered the password, Sophie's birthday. He hesitated, then opened it. Most of the files were mundane, family photos, school forms, but in a hidden folder labeled Archive, he found something that made his heart race. An email app. One of the accounts was unfamiliar, emilyhartprivmail.com. Daniel's hands hovered over the keyboard. This wasn't her usual address. He tried a few guesses for the password. Then he remembered her favorite book, The Great Gatsby, and typed Great Gatsby 1925. It worked. The inbox was sparse, but the contents hit like punches. Most messages came from someone named Claire Davis, an old college friend Daniel hadn't heard of in years. The emails revealed a different Emily, hurt, angry, uncertain, and planning. As Daniel scrolled through the conversations, the truth came into focus. The woman he'd built his life with had been preparing to leave long before the first argument or legal letter. And suddenly, the ground beneath him gave way. The first email was dated 6 months ago. It seemed innocent. Emily, I'm glad we reconnected. You sounded so worn out on the phone. What's really going on? Emily's reply was raw. Claire, I'm drowning. Daniel's not cruel, but he controls everything. I feel invisible. I've thought about divorce, but he's a lawyer. He'd destroy me in court. Daniel stared at the screen, jaw tight, hands shaking. He scrolled down. Claire's response was chilling. Then be smarter. Say he caused you emotional distress. Judges eat that up. You don't need proof, just fear. Start keeping a diary. Exaggerate. It works. Emily hesitated in her next message. But he never yelled or embarrassed me publicly. What would I even say? You don't need facts, Claire replied. You need a story. Plant seeds. If necessary, hint at something worse. You don't have to accuse him outright, just imply it. Daniel slammed the laptop shut, heart racing. These weren't venting emails. They were strategy, deliberate, manipulative. His wife, the woman he once trusted, was learning how to build a false case against him. He took screenshots and forwarded them to himself and his lawyer, Martin. It made him sick, but if he didn't use them, she might destroy everything. His name, his kids' trust, his life. Meanwhile, Emily stepped into the kitchen, soaked from the rain. Sophie was at the table, fingers wrapped around a mug. Where were you? She asked sharply. Emily avoided her gaze. Library meeting, fall festival planning. Sophie wasn't buying it. You're always gone, and when I ask, it's adult stuff. I'm not dumb, Mom. I know you and Dad are getting divorced. Emily froze. We're working through things, she said quietly. Sophie glared. You're not working on anything. You don't even speak. I've seen your notebooks. You're hiding something. Emily's voice tightened. That's private, Sophie. You wouldn't understand. Yes, I would, she shouted, standing. You say it's for me and Ethan, but I don't believe you. You're lying. She stormed out. Emily sat down, shaking. She pulled out her phone and messaged Claire. Sophie's starting to figure things out. I don't know how much longer I can keep this quiet. Claire responded instantly. Stay strong. You're doing this for freedom. Don't let guilt win. The next day, Daniel met with Martin in his office. Martin reviewed the emails, eyebrows raised. This is a bombshell, he said. If we present this, her case collapses. But once this gets out, there's no undoing it. Daniel didn't flinch. She was ready to accuse me of harassment. I have no choice. Martin nodded slowly. Okay, we'll move forward. But brace yourself, Emily won't go down easy. Upstairs, Sophie sat on her bed, scrolling through search results. Controlling relationships, high-conflict divorce, when one parent turns the kids against the other. None of it brought clarity, only more confusion. She thought about her mom's cryptic notes, her dad's quiet distance. Nothing felt right anymore. Ethan noticed, too. His sister cried more often, talked less. One evening, he found her wiping her face quietly. Sophie, are you okay? He asked. She forced a smile. It's fine, just... Everything's messy right now. He frowned. Is it Mom and Dad? She nodded. Yeah, but I'll figure it out. I have to. Ethan didn't fully understand, but he could feel the house shifting. His mom hid her phone like it was a secret. His dad stayed locked in the guest room, glued to his laptop. Their family felt like it was cracking open. That night, silence gripped the Harper house. Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the emails burned into his thoughts. Emily sat alone, rereading Claire's message, her chest tight with guilt. Sophie wrote in her journal, trying to untangle truth from lies. Ethan lay in the dark, wondering when things stopped making sense. Secrets were surfacing, dangerous, raw, and every step forward now felt like walking across thin ice. Autumn burned through Hartford, coloring the streets in gold and crimson. But inside the Harper home, the fire wasn't beautiful. It was consuming. 3 weeks had passed since Daniel uncovered Emily's messages. Since then, life had turned into a silent war. Each parent guarded their next move. Their children, caught in between, were the pawns. The house had once been full of warmth. Now it was a chessboard. Every word, every silence, was a calculated risk. Emily prepared like a soldier before a final push. Catherine Wells, her lawyer, reminded her daily, the judge will listen to the kids, especially Sophie. If they want to stay with you, you've won. Emily nodded, torn between fear and guilt. She didn't want to drag her children into the courtroom, but without them, she was afraid she'd lose everything. Daniel was strong, ruthless, and she couldn't afford to be weak, not now. It started with small shifts. Over dinner, Emily began weaving the past into conversations. Moments when Daniel had missed soccer games or forgotten school recitals. Her tone was gentle, almost nostalgic, but the message lingered. Remember when Dad promised to take you to that game, Ethan? But work called and he bailed at the last minute, she'd say, stirring her soup. Ethan would nod quietly. Sophie, more observant, sensed a purpose behind her mother's comments but couldn't quite name it. Emily grew more present, reading with Ethan, complimenting his chess moves, casually noting how Dad always put work first. With Sophie, she shared dreams of being a writer, of who she once wanted to be, planting seeds of sympathy and doubt. She knew Sophie was watching her more closely. Still, pressure from the looming trial pushed her to keep going. Daniel, meanwhile, felt the children pulling away. Sophie no longer came to him for advice. Ethan had retreated into silence. Daniel tried to reconnect, inviting Sophie out for coffee, offering to shoot hoops with Ethan, but their responses were distant. He suspected Emily was turning them against him, though he had no proof. He held on to the damning emails, not yet ready to use them, not unless there was no other way. The custody hearing began in the cold, formal atmosphere of Hartford County Court. The judge, Elizabeth Crow, carried a no-nonsense demeanor as if she'd seen this all too often. Daniel sat beside Martin, tapping a pen nervously. Emily appeared calm, her attorney Catherine confident and polished. The day was procedural, until the judge called for a psychological assessment of the children. Dr. Laura Green, a well-regarded child psychologist, was appointed to meet them. Sophie arrived at Dr. Green's office first, arms crossed, her posture guarded. The space was warm and welcoming. Beige walls, shelves of books, a desk topped with crayons and sketch pads meant to ease tension. Sophie, this is a safe space. Just tell me how things feel at home, Laura said gently. Sophie looked down. I don't know what to say. Laura smiled softly. Just the basics. How are things with your parents? Sophie hesitated, thoughts racing. Her mom's whispers, her dad's silence, the tension in every room. They don't talk. Dad sleeps in another room. Mom says he's controlling. And do you feel that way? Laura asked. Sophie's mind flashed with memories, her father helping with math, cheering at debates, but also her mother's voice. He made decisions for us, Sophie. That's not normal. Sometimes. He wanted me to do homework right after school, and he got upset when I pushed back. Are you afraid of him? The question hit hard. Sophie paused, thinking of what her mother might want her to say, but the truth surfaced. No, she said. He's just Dad. I don't think he's bad, but Mom says he made her unhappy. I don't know what's true. Laura took quiet notes. What about your mom? Sophie shifted. She's loving. She's always there, but she hides things. I've seen her sneak around. It's like she's not being honest. Laura met her gaze. You don't need to pick sides, just be honest. Tears welled in Sophie's eyes. I just want them to stop fighting. Laura's final notes read, Child shows emotional strain. Statements suggest potential influence from mother. Recommends further observation. Ethan entered next. Quiet and reserved, he sat with his head down. How are things with Dad? Laura asked. He's okay, Ethan shrugged. He works a lot, but he always took me to chess. Mom says he didn't spend time with us, but I remember he did. Laura noted the contradiction. And your mom? She's nice, but sad. She says Dad made her that way. I don't know if that's true. Like Sophie, Ethan seemed caught in the middle, confused, torn. Back in court, the custody fight escalated. Catherine presented Emily's journals, filled with accusations, claims of control, emotional neglect, eroded autonomy. Her witnesses, friends and neighbors, spoke of her exhaustion and sacrifice. Martin countered slowly. He began introducing Emily's emails to Claire, letting the courtroom glimpse at a different picture. Strategic planning, coached narratives, suggestions to distort the truth. He hadn't shown the full deck yet, but his sharp questioning was enough to make Emily uneasy. The judge took notes, Emily's hands clenched under the table. The battle lines were shifting. The courtroom had become Daniel's battlefield. Every day chipped away at his resolve. From across the room, he saw his children, Sophie and Ethan, watching with uncertain eyes. He wanted to reach them, to assure them everything would be okay, but empty promises felt insulting now. On the opposite bench, Emily avoided his gaze, stiff and bracing for impact. That evening, Daniel found Sophie curled up on her bed, knees to her chest. Why is this so hard? She whispered. He sat beside her, hiding the weight he carried. I don't have all the answers, he said gently, but I'll always protect you and Ethan. She looked up, eyes wet. Mom says you were bad for her. I don't know what to believe. Daniel swallowed hard. I made mistakes, but I loved her. And I love you. Sometimes people remember things differently. Sophie nodded, but doubt lingered in her eyes. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Emily stared at a message from Claire. The kids are your leverage. Stay close to them. Remind them who's always been there. Emily felt torn. Every time she saw Sophie's uncertainty, her resolve cracked a little more. She wanted out, but not at this cost. Winter descended over Hartford in a glittering frost. But inside the courthouse, the fight for custody was anything but calm. Daniel Harper, once a confident corporate attorney, now found himself stripped down, battling his wife in a courtroom where love was no defense. A month into the trial, Emily's legal team continued painting him as a controlling partner. Her lawyer, Catherine Wells, backed by journals, friends' testimonies, and psychologist reports, built a meticulous case. Sophie and Ethan's interviews with Dr. Laura Green were used as emotional evidence. Daniel knew those conversations weren't neutral. His kids were caught in the crossfire. At his office, Daniel met with his attorney, Martin Craig. The leather-scented room felt heavy with strategy. We need to go on offense, Martin said. I've got a private investigator, document analysts, and a psychologist ready to dispute Laura's findings. But if we use the emails from Claire, it'll be scorched earth. Are you ready for that? Daniel glanced at a framed photo of his kids. He nodded. I won't destroy her in their eyes, but I won't let her destroy me either. Enter Ron Keller, a seasoned private investigator with sharp instincts. Within a week, he uncovered that Emily had opened a Swiss bank account 2 years prior. Modest deposits, unaccounted for, hinted at something more. Then came travel records. Supposed trips to writing conferences in New York turned out to be hotel rendezvous with a man named James Reed, a freelance journalist. Ron handed over a folder. Inside were receipts, photos, and emails. One read, "Can't wait to see you again, Em. You make me feel alive." Emily had replied, "This is hard, but I'm waiting too." Daniel stared at the images, stunned. She cheated, while I was trying to hold our family together. Martin rested a hand on his shoulder. We now have motive. Her accusations were a smokescreen. But the surprises weren't over. A few days later, Sarah Miller, Emily's former friend, showed up at Martin's office. Pale and visibly nervous, she spoke with hesitation. "I can't stay quiet anymore," she confessed. "Emily planned this. She talked about divorce 3 years ago, asked how to keep the house, the money. She said Daniel was too wealthy to just walk away from." "Will you testify?" Martin asked. She nodded. "Yes, this isn't justice. It's strategy." As Daniel's case strengthened, Emily grew suspicious. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Catherine warned her to stay focused. Emily turned up the pressure, subtly reminding the kids how their father had neglected them, how he'd never really understood them. But Sophie, already wary, pulled away. She wrote in her journal, "I don't know who to believe. Mom keeps looking at me like she's waiting for something. It scares me." Even Ethan noticed the shift. One day, he stumbled across Emily's unlocked phone. A message from Claire flashed across the screen. "Remind the kids how Daniel ignored them. It'll work in court." He didn't fully understand, but he remembered that phrase. Work in court. It stuck with him. Back in court, Martin introduced a new expert, Dr. Andrew Carter, a veteran psychologist. He challenged Dr. Green's findings, stating that the children's statements about Daniel felt rehearsed, possibly coached. "Signs of emotional distress are real," Carter testified, "but not from mistreatment, rather from being caught between two conflicting narratives." The courtroom listened closely. Daniel remained calm, but inside, he knew this battle was far from over. Every truth that surfaced cut both ways, and still, at the center of it all, were two kids, torn, confused, and quietly breaking under the weight of their parents' war. Tension cracked through the courtroom like static before a storm. Judge Elizabeth Crowe sat stone-faced, watching every move with the sharp gaze of someone who'd seen it all. Today was the turning point. Catherine Wells opened with her final push. Her voice was calm but forceful as she painted Emily as a woman silenced by years of emotional control. She quoted passages from Emily's journals, claims of verbal criticism, isolation, and emotional pressure, and called on two close friends to support the narrative. One, Lisa Thompson, described Emily weeping in her kitchen, saying Daniel made her feel invisible. Then came the psychologist's report. Catherine read excerpts where Sophie and Ethan allegedly expressed discomfort around their father, noting his strictness and emotional coldness. Catherine pressed the image of a hardworking mother versus a detached, ambitious father. Her closing words, "These children deserve the parent who put them first." Daniel's anger surged, but his attorney Martin Craig whispered, "Wait, it's our turn." When Martin stood, the courtroom shifted. Calm and composed, he began tearing apart the image Catherine had constructed. "These journals lack verification," he said, holding up a report. Document analyst Dr. Allison Brooks confirmed that parts had been written with different inks and on paper from various sources, some likely backdated. Then Martin dropped the first major blow, emails between Emily and Claire Davis. He read directly from certified messages where Emily was advised to exaggerate emotional distress and hint at something more serious if necessary. When Catherine objected, Martin explained the emails came from a shared family laptop. Emily turned pale. The second blow came from Sarah Miller. Once Emily's close friend, she entered with confidence but avoided eye contact with Emily. Under oath, Sarah revealed Emily had been planning the divorce for years, strategizing how to divide assets and maximize what she could get. "It stopped being about leaving," she said. "It became about winning." Catherine tried to paint Sarah as bitter and biased. Sarah stood firm. Then Martin introduced Dr. Andrew Carter, who countered the children's previous psychological evaluation. "Their words sound coached," he said. "They're caught between two worlds and mirroring their mother's pain, not necessarily their own feelings." but it was the final blow that left the courtroom silent. Martin presented discreet but damning proof of Emily's affair. Travel records, hotel bills, CCTV stills, and messages between Emily and a man named James Reed. No graphic details were shared, only the implication. Emily had been hiding more than pain. She had been leading a double life. After court, Emily returned home visibly shaken. She barely made it into the kitchen before collapsing into a chair, her hands trembling. She texted Claire, "It's falling apart. Sarah turned on me." "What now?" No reply. Sophie arrived home to find her mother dazed and distant. "What's going on?" she asked. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just a tough day." But Sophie didn't buy it. "Is it the trial? Why won't you just tell the truth?" Emily snapped. "Sophie, enough! You don't know what you're saying!" Sophie stepped back, eyes welling with tears. "I understand more than you think, and I'm tired of the lies." She stormed into her room, slamming the door. Ethan, silently listening nearby, walked to his room and stared at his chessboard. He didn't make a move. The pieces felt frozen, just like his family. Daniel returned late, exhausted. In the quiet of the guest room, he sat with the folder holding all the evidence. He could end it now. Submit proof of Emily's affair, her secret bank account. But part of him still hesitated, not because she didn't deserve it, but because Sophie and Ethan did not. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. This war had cost too much already. Outside, Hartford sat still under a veil of frost. Inside the Harper home, the silence wasn't peace. It was the weight of what was coming. The trial had reached its final chapter, and every person involved, Daniel, Emily, Sophie, and Ethan, was holding their breath. The storm hadn't passed. It was only beginning. "Your Honor," Martin began, voice calm but firm. "The plaintiff accuses my client of causing emotional distress, but the facts tell another story. Hidden accounts, an ongoing affair, and calculated manipulation of her children. This is not a victim. This is someone who orchestrated a family's collapse for personal gain." Emily sat motionless, her expression controlled, but her hands gripped the table's edge. She could feel the case slipping away. Catherine leaned in, whispering reassurance, but it barely registered. Emily knew that the revelation of her affair with James Reed and the secret Swiss bank account had destroyed her credibility. Possibly forever in her children's eyes, too. She wanted to defend herself, say she'd been lonely, desperate, but none of it would matter. Lies don't hold up in court. The judge called a recess. Daniel stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. He watched Emily disappear into the consultation room, her pace quick, unsteady. He didn't feel triumphant, just drained. Nothing about this felt like winning. Back at school, Sophie hid in the library. She skipped class to avoid questions, trying to focus on her journal, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she searched for custody laws, reading stories of children who lost contact with one parent after divorce. Her stomach turned. She thought of what she'd told the psychologist. Things her mother had pushed her to say. Guilt tightened in her chest. She hadn't wanted to hurt her dad, but she wanted to please her mom even more. At home, Ethan stayed in his room, pretending to be sick. He sat at his chessboard, unmoving. He couldn't forget the message he'd seen on his mom's phone. "Remind the kids how Daniel ignored them. It'll work in court." It echoed in his head, over and over. He didn't understand everything, but he knew one thing. He felt used. That night, Daniel returned home exhausted. He found Sophie in the living room, a book in her hands but unread. "How was court?" she asked softly. He sat beside her, trying to soften the truth. "It's complicated. But I want you to know, I'm not fighting against your mom. I'm fighting for you, for Ethan." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to choose between you. I just want it to stop." "I know," Daniel said, hugging her. "So do I." Later, Emily came home. She said nothing. She went straight to the bedroom, opened her laptop, and typed to Claire. "They know everything. About James, about the money." "I don't know what to do," Claire responded. "Stay focused. The kids are still your way forward." But Emily felt hollow. Her plan had unraveled. Her credibility was gone, and she wasn't sure who she was anymore. The courtroom was packed the next morning. Snow blanketed Hartford, but inside there was no warmth, only judgment. Judge Crow adjusted her glasses and began reading the verdict. Her tone was even, but the words struck like hammers. "The court finds insufficient evidence of emotional distress caused by Daniel Harper," she said. Furthermore, the plaintiff's correspondence and testimony from witnesses suggest these allegations were, at least partially, fabricated for legal and financial advantage. Gasps rippled through the room. Catherine leaned toward Emily, whispering again. Emily stared straight ahead, numb. Judge Crow continued. Both parties contributed to the children's emotional distress. However, given the findings, primary custody of Sophie and Ethan is awarded to Daniel Harper. Joint custody will remain, with supervised visitation rights for Emily Harper for the first 6 months. Emily closed her eyes. The words cut deeper than she expected. Losing primary custody felt like losing a part of herself. On the financial front, the judge rejected her claim to 70% of the marital assets. Due to the plaintiff's undisclosed finances and extramarital relationship, she ruled, the estate will be split evenly, excluding the foreign account, now under review by tax authorities. It was official. Her affair was no longer rumor. Her name was in court records, and it wouldn't stay quiet. Finally, the judge urged therapy for the entire family. The emotional toll on the children has been severe, she said. You owe them healing, not more damage. With a final rap of the gavel, the trial was over. Daniel stood slowly. Martin clapped him on the back. You did it! But Daniel didn't feel victorious, just tired. He looked across the courtroom at Emily, her head bowed. For a moment, he wanted to speak to her, say something kind. But he didn't. Some distances couldn't be crossed. Outside, reporters swarmed. Mrs. Harper, were you planning a divorce for money? Is the affair confirmed? Emily said nothing. She walked past the cameras, her heels clicking across marble. Her carefully constructed life had collapsed, and she didn't want witnesses for what came next. By nightfall, the Harper case was splashed across headlines in local news. Lawyer's wife exposed. Manipulation and infidelity rock Hartford. Diaries reveal divorce scheme. The stories were everywhere. Somehow, excerpts from Emily's private journals, used as evidence in court, had leaked, twisted beyond recognition. One quote was repeated the most. I'm tired of being a shadow, but I'll find a way to take my place. A line born from sadness was now painted as greed. Emily came home to an empty house. Sophie and Ethan had gone to stay with Daniel, per the judge's temporary custody order. She sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where her family used to eat. Her phone buzzed nonstop, some messages of pity, others filled with scorn. She ignored them all. She opened her laptop, typed a message to Claire. It's over. I lost my kids, my name, everything. You said this would work. It didn't. But she never sent it. Instead, she deleted the message, shut the lid, and let the silence close in. At Daniel's, the air was heavy. The kids were there, but distant. Sophie flipped through a book without reading. Ethan sat at his chessboard, but didn't move a single piece. Daniel joined them, trying to connect. I know this isn't easy, he said gently, but we're still a family. Sophie looked up, eyes filled with hurt. A family? The news says Mom lied and cheated. People hate her. How is that still a family? Daniel's heart ached. I didn't want this, but I had to protect you. She made mistakes, but she loves you. Ethan finally spoke. Then why did she lie? I saw her message to Claire, telling her to remind us how you ignored us. Was that true? Daniel paused, then nodded. I worked too much. I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. And your mom, she was in pain. People do the wrong thing when they're desperate. Sophie stood abruptly. I don't want to hate her, she whispered, but I can't trust her either. She disappeared into her room. Ethan stayed. Are we living here now? Yes, Daniel replied, but you'll still see your mom. I promise. The next morning, Daniel took them to therapy as the court had ordered. Dr. Ana Rivera, a calm and compassionate counselor, began working with the kids. Sophie talked about her anger and confusion. Ethan shared his fear that their family would never feel whole again. Daniel attended sessions too, learning how to be a father in this fractured new world. Meanwhile, Emily had moved into a small apartment downtown. She didn't fight for the house. She couldn't afford to. Her social circle had evaporated. Former friends avoided her, and the library club quietly dropped her from their invite list. She texted the kids, but their replies were short and hesitant. She knew they'd seen everything. The affair, the hidden money, her texts. She wanted to explain it had come from fear, not greed. But even she struggled to believe that now. One night, alone in her dim apartment, she opened an old journal. The words once gave her comfort. Now they felt like someone else's story. She began a new entry. I chased freedom, but I lost what mattered most. Then she cried, really cried, for the first time in months. No plans, no strategy, just raw human pain. Daniel, though legally victorious, didn't feel like he'd won. He tried to rebuild a life with his kids, helping Sophie with college essays, playing chess with Ethan, but every silence reminded him nothing would be the same. He thought about reaching out to Emily just to talk, but knew it wasn't time yet. Sophie started writing letters to her mom, but never sent them. They were full of questions, hurt, and unspoken love. Ethan stayed quiet, channeling his feelings into drawings, like the one where white and black chess pieces sat jumbled on the board. No rules, no sides. As winter dragged on in Hartford, snow covered the streets like a quiet blanket, hiding the scars. The Harper house, once so full of life, now sat dark. Daniel, Sophie, and Ethan tried to move forward, but Emily's presence lingered in every room. In her apartment, Emily tried to find redemption. She didn't know how to begin. The damage went deeper than any legal defeat. It tore through the people she loved. Then spring arrived, slow and cautious. The earth softened, trees budded, life peeked through again. Daniel saw it as a sign. A full year had passed since the court ruling. His family was bruised, but still standing. It was time for a real fresh start. The old house was too full of ghosts, good and bad. He listed it for sale, not because he had to, but because he needed to. Too many memories clung to the walls. Sophie's childhood laughter, Ethan's first steps, quiet evenings by the fire, memories stained by what followed. A smaller home in a nearby neighborhood waited for them, where no one knew the story, where they could build something new. Daniel packed up the last box from his home office. Inside was the manuscript he'd quietly worked on after the dust settled, a reflection of his experience, something raw and real. Not a takedown of Emily, but a voice for those often ignored. The title, Shadows of Control, when the pain comes from her. Not revenge, not blame, just truth, finally spoken. Daniel never set out to write a book, but it became his way of coping. Night after night, once the kids were asleep, he sat alone in the spare bedroom, typing through memories that refused to leave him alone. Quiet manipulation, subtle gaslighting, the way love had been twisted into leverage, it all poured out onto the page. He revisited their marriage, not with bitterness, but with a need to understand. Emily's dismissive comments, her silence during arguments, her journal entries that felt more like evidence than confession. With help from their former therapist, Dr. Ana Rivera, Daniel began to see how love, when used to manipulate, could distort truth. Ana showed him how his sense of duty had been turned against him and how easy it was not to notice until it was too late. He wasn't writing to accuse. The manuscript, nearly complete, was titled Shadows of Control. A small publisher in Boston had already expressed interest. Daniel wasn't chasing headlines. He wanted to speak to men who had experienced the same and help his kids someday understand why their family unraveled. Upstairs, Sophie packed her room. Now, 17, she folded away drawings, photos, unsent letters to her mom. Her once colorful walls were bare. The emptiness in the room echoed the ache in her heart. A year had passed since the trial, and her relationship with Emily was still fragile. Her mom reached out regularly, but Sophie kept her replies short. Emily no longer resembled the vibrant woman who hosted book clubs and neighborhood barbecues. She was quieter now, tired. Sophie struggled with forgiveness. The betrayal, the diaries leaked to the press, the messages to Claire, those wounds didn't heal easily. In therapy, Dr. Rivera helped her face the complicated truth. You can still love someone who's hurt you. But Sophie didn't know how to close that gap. She wrote in her journal, I want to love her again, but not the version of her that lied to us. Ethan, 13, didn't talk much about what he felt. He retreated into chess and video games, worlds where the rules made sense. His visits with Emily were stiff and quiet. She tried to engage, but he'd only nod or respond with a shrug. He couldn't forget what he'd read on her phone, the manipulation, and it sat like a wall between them. One day, in therapy, he said softly, I don't want her to think I hate her, but I don't know what to say. Daniel, now balancing fatherhood with fewer work hours, tried to build something steady. They cooked dinners together, laughed at burnt pasta, and argued playfully over furniture placement. Ethan proved to be a surprising expert in cupcakes, while Sophie rekindled her love for art during gallery visits. Each of those small, quiet moments felt like a seed planted in fresh soil. Emily, on the other side of town, lived in a modest apartment. Her name still carried the sting of scandal in Hartford. She quit her job at the library and started working at a bookstore where no one knew her. Books had always been her escape, and now they were her refuge. She began writing again, this time fiction, short stories about women rebuilding themselves. She never shared them, but writing offered a small sense of peace. Her visits with Sophie and Ethan were court-supervised. She brought them books and cookies, but the connection was faint. She wrote them letters, long, emotional, but rarely sent them. In one she never mailed, she wrote, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you'll understand that I loved you even when I was lost." She knew rebuilding trust would take time, maybe years. Still, she waited. On moving day, Daniel gathered the kids in the empty living room. Boxes lined the walls. The old house echoed with memories. "This year's been rough," he said gently. "But no matter where we go, we're in this together." Sophie nodded. "I just want things to be normal again. Not like before, better." Ethan looked up, hesitant. "Will Mom ever be part of that?" Daniel paused. "She's still your mom. I hope someday, when you're ready, you'll find your way back to her. But right now, we focus on us. Deal?" "Deal," Ethan said, tugging at his sleeve. They stepped outside as the moving truck idled at the curb. Daniel glanced back at the house one last time. The white paint, the bay windows, the rooms filled with laughter and sorrow. It was no longer home, just a chapter closed. He locked the door quietly and turned to the kids. "Let's go meet our new beginning." The new house was smaller, sunlit, and full of possibility. Sophie talked about turning the garden into a greenhouse. Ethan had already chosen his corner for the chessboard. That night, as they unpacked, they teased and argued over where to hang the old family photo. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Later, with the kids asleep on the couch under a blanket, Daniel sat nearby, laptop open on his knees. He added the final line to his book. "Even in the ruins of the past, something new can bloom, if we're brave enough to nurture it." He closed the laptop, turned off the light, and sat beside his children, listening to their steady breathing as spring pressed forward outside, silent but unstoppable.